For decades, the memory of Army Air Force Tech Sergeant Kenneth McKeeman lived on only in old photographs.
He died 8 years before I was even born. A couple of older cousins who were infants when he was born, but we certainly didn't know anything about him until this whole process unfolded.
McKeeman's nephew Michael was part of that process.
And I see a strong family resemblance.
The military identifying McKeeman's remains recently and returning them back home to Connecticut where he grew up, 80 years after his death in World War II.
I received a call that, frankly, was a family gathering. It was out of the blue from the military, and at first I thought it was, it was a scam.
It was not a scam, and now McKeeman's family has a full story to go with his pictures.
I grew up in the Depression and then entered a war as a young guy and all those things. Just an understanding of the resilience of the families of our family.
McKeeman died March 11th, 1944, at 23 years old. The B-24 bomber he was on was hit with fire over France's Mediterranean coast and crashed into the sea.
He left behind a 19-year-old widow.
All 11 crew members were killed. German forces recovered several sets of remains, but McKeeman's would sit unidentified for decades. After being recovered, McKeeman's anonymous remains rested in a cemetery in France until they were finally identified last September.
The real tragedy of all this, besides his death, was the folks that raised our uncle. And his aunts, uncles, his parents died early. His aunts, uncles, and siblings and cousins, they have all since passed, thinking that his remains would never be found.
But those family ties are what solved the case, with Michael and his cousins helping military scientists.
They said, would you be willing to give DNA for identification purposes? I said, of course.
His contribution, one piece of the identification puzzle the military put together.
Pictures of the remains that they were able to find, and then some of the forensic analysis they did.
All of it detailed in a report of the process provided to the family.
We met with the military, explained everything. They were absolutely fabulous, and it was just more of, it wasn't a cold handoff, and we really appreciated that. You could tell that they were really vested in this process.
Now McKeeman's family will get to write the final page, laying him to rest with full military honors at the State Veterans Cemetery in Middletown. The service set for June 7th, McKeeman's birthday.
I think that we're sitting here today because of the advances made in DNA in identifying remains. So hopefully this happy ending, or if you can call it happy, will be repeated many times over.
Those advances allowing for celebration of the complete picture of legacies defined by sacrifice and service. Angelo Bavaro, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.